All righty, folks. Welcome to the show. We're stoked to have everybody here today. We're going to be, I'm Wade, by the way. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Zapier. Really excited to have everyone here. If you're leading a company through an AI transformation or you're interested in building AI workflows, agents, things like that, well, you are in the right place. We're going to have a great guest for you all. We're going to talk a little bit about how we've been doing this inside of our companies, but then we're also going to demo stuff and show some of the very nitty gritty tactical details of how people go about this how they navigate this crazy world of AI. Before we do that, I want to go through a bunch of housekeeping. Usually during these events, people ask all of the same questions. So I'm just going to answer them up front so you're aware. We are recording the session. So if you're nervous about a recording, if you're going to get a recording link, good news for you. We're going to have one for you afterwards. So if you want to reference this material back, you can. We're going to have a Q&A session. So you can send questions through the Q&A panel. At the very end, Matt and I are going to have time to answer all the questions for you. If you're having troubles with anything, Livestorm, the platform we use for this, tends to work best on Google Chrome. So if you're not a Google Chrome user and you're having some trouble, pop open Google Chrome. It'll be easier for you. And with that, you know all the housekeeping items. If folks in the chat are asking any of these questions, y'all can help us by telling them the answers to these housekeeping questions as we go. All righty, with that, the main event here. So I'm excited to welcome Matt Britton. Matt is the founder and CEO of Suzy. Suzy is a real-time consumer insights platform. It's used by tons of trusted brands over the world. Think like Microsoft, PepsiCo, you name it. Matt's got over 25 years of experience advising really big companies. Think half the Fortune 500. And he works pretty hard to help them stay ahead of evolving markets. Matt's recently got a published best-selling book on Gen AI. And in the book, he offers a playbook for leaders to navigate an AI world. Matt's also a longtime avid Zapier user. He's built tons of Zaps, tons of agents, done a lot with AI. And so he's going to show off a lot about what he's doing with this stuff. So with that, welcome to the stage, Matt. We're
Thanks so much for having me. As you know, Wade, I'm a huge fan of your product. And, I owe a lot of my success in my career, as well as the success of Suzy, to your product, because it's really enabled us to move so much faster and to really differentiate in the marketplace.
Love it. Well, maybe to kick it off, talk to us a little bit about how Suzy worked before this AI thing came into place. What did the before times look like?
Yeah, so the AI journey of Suzy has been an interesting one, and I think it's really a tale that I would bet is being played out every day across startups and even large companies, which is this thing called ChatGPT, came into consumer lexicon. Everyone started using it, and companies knew that something big was happening. And obviously, every time there's a new technological evolution, especially as a CEO, my first inclination is give it to my R&D team to figure out. And I did that. And quickly, I realized that they were hitting walls because unlike other evolutions, whether it be social media or mobile or digital itself, this was different because it was a completely new realm of technological innovation. And it opened up a whole new area of opportunities that I think traditional R&D teams aren't necessarily conditioned to be able to act on. And ultimately, what I realize is this is not just another technology where we can give a product roadmap and directions to basically build a bunch of features. This required us to zoom out and really think strategically in terms of what are the core problems that we need to solve as a business? And based upon that framework, I decided to take AI into my own hands and basically lead the charge. And before I was going to build AI into anything for our product, I wanted to show how AI can be used, as well as gain more efficiency by building AI into the way we operate. And that's what enabled me to start to really dive into AI for our company and really dive into Zapier to build a bunch of cool stuff.
So you talked about ChatGPT as being kind of this catalyzing moment. Did you have a particular use case or eureka moment yourself where you were like, oh my, this is big?
Well, I think, a lot of people still think that using AI means using chatbots like ChatGPT, when the reality is that's really the first step, or like the 101 is just to use a traditional chatbot. And I would imagine most people that are on this webinar know that. I look at it, there's kind of like, to oversimplify it, there's really 3 phases of AI adoption. The first of which is just using tools in a very linear fashion, putting in a prompt, getting something out of it, and doing something with that generative output. I think level 2 is automation, which is definitely the first area. Obviously, I used your platform, Zapier, for to build a variety of different automations, which really create those eureka moments. And I think level 3, which obviously I know your company has invested a ton of resources and product innovation, is in the world of agents, right? Like autonomous agents that can make decisions across a variety of different applications to generate outcomes and productivity that maybe you never knew was possible, right? So it's about as deterministic as it gets. If you're just using a chatbot, you're asking it for something and it's giving it right back to you. When you're using automation, the idea should be 1 + 1 = 3 or 5 or 10, right? But when you're leveraging an agent, it could be 1 + 1 = 1,000, because you're leveraging the intelligence of AI to take new avenues and paths to output something. But of course, I didn't start at that level, nor was the whole agentic workflow really even a thing when I started, which is why sort of my entry point was really in the realm of automations. And I've been using Zapier since it launched, but I was using it for much more rudimentary automations, like we get a lead in Google and it gets sent to, and a lead score gets created and it gets sent to our Salesforce database, right? Like things like that I had long implemented into our go-to-market strategy that were really nice because they saved us a lot of time, but had nowhere near the amount of impact that I was able to create in the age of AI, because putting AI into Zapier automations, and of course agents themselves, is like putting blood into a robot, because now all of a sudden you have intelligence flowing throughout and you're creating new things, which as they're created get dumped into the automation. So the variability and the personalization of what you can create like really knows no bounds. And that's what I was able to quickly sort of uncover and realize as I started to dive in.
Yeah. So you figured this out for yourself. What techniques did you use to help everyone inside of Suzy, all the employees you're working, sort of pick up on this trend in the same way you did?
Well, I can't say they've all even picked up on it yet. I think, it takes a certain way of thinking. And I think the traditional engineering approach, in some ways, like I started a market research company, but I knew nothing about market research, right? The person that started Airbnb, not to compare our company to Airbnb, but knew nothing about travel. And I think in this world, there is a curse of knowledge in engineering, because we're humans and we're creatures of habit. And we're so wedded to the traditional forms of product development that we would never think that a complete product stack could be built within Zapier. But I was too dumb to know otherwise, right? I didn't know how to write code. And I was just basically left to my own devices with the only tool I've ever used. And then learning about the fact that you can bring in AI tools like OpenAI or Perplexity or Gemini into it. And I just start to put the pieces together. And I think it really is very much emblematic of like people who can use Zapier well, I think generally have the skill sets that are going to be future-proofed in the AI world. Because when you think about what makes somebody, I think, valuable in this new world, it's not about the order takers, right? And it's not about people who really thrive on knowing how to solve a problem. It's really about people who have critical thinking, creativity, problem-solving ability, and people who understand how to focus on the problem that needs to be solved versus how to solve the problem. In a knowledge economy, if you know how to code, you're incredibly valuable. And coding is still obviously valuable in this world, but it's not the be-all, end-all on how to create things. That's not enough, because it really is up-leveling and understanding, okay, what are the core problems of my business? And what are the steps if I were to build a product that were to solve that? And what data would I need to be able to effectively get there? And that's how basically I was able to dive in and start to create things for our company.
Love it. All right. The people want to see the goods. They want to see actual stuff that you're making. So Matt, do you want to share your screen and maybe walk us through your first example of a Zap that you built, an automation that is solving a big problem for you all?
Absolutely. So let me just pull open. I'm going to pull a bunch of things open and
Okay.
and we'll dive in. Let's go back to here. Share screen. Okay. The first tool, and I would say one of the most impactful tools that we have built at Suzy is called the Gong call stream. And basically, so we use Gong, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with Gong. And Gong is obviously a tool that records calls with customers. And our customers are full well aware the call is being recorded. Our company went remote during the pandemic, and as a byproduct, we were, forced to basically operate in the cloud. And that's when we deployed tools like Gong. And ever since 2020, every call that we've had with a customer and a prospect has been recorded. And once it starts recording, the customer it's being recorded for quality assurance. And at the end, there's a transcript. Now, when AI first became a thing in 2023, Gong didn't allow you to basically extract that transcript, but we were a customer of Gong. They allowed you to see it, but in terms of like, I could see the transcript, but there was no automated way to extract it and put it into an automation. And this is when it comes to kind of having to be creative in certain ways. So the trigger, this is a multi-step prompt, and the reason it's multi-step I'll get into in a second. But with this, the trigger was a new Gong call, because that is a native and was always a native innovation within Zapier. But once there was a Gong call, I had to use a third-party scraping tool on my own data called Browse AI, which is also a native integration with Zapier, to basically scrape my own calls, and rather the transcripts of my own calls. So you can see once there's actually a call that's created, it finds the ID, which is right here. And what I figured out is that ID is at the end of the URL string, and that's where all the Gong transcripts live. So basically, I was able to, through this ID, essentially create an automation where this tool, Browse AI, runs a task as soon as the Gong call is done. And I basically put the beginning of the URL string here, and the variable is that ID. And with that variable code, it essentially runs a task which scrapes all of the call transcript information off of Gong. And now all of a sudden I'm in business. I'm able to start to run an automation from it. So sometimes the platforms that you're working with might not have the right hooks for AI, as in the case here, but there are ways where you can hack it. And again, I'm not an engineer, but when I tried to find a transcript, I saw that this was the basic structure. At the end, there was an ID, and the ID came from here, and it initiated that scrape on Browse AI, which started, the first step of the Zap. So before I move on, Wade, any questions on that, or should I keep going in terms of what came from there?
So this is great. You've got this Gong transcript. Now, what do you do with it? Like, there's all sorts of interesting things that I can think of that you would do with it, but what are you doing with it?
Yes. So the reason that these transcripts are important, and I should probably start with that, is, if you think about a business, what more source of truth would you have than what your customers are saying in the wild, right? Like I had 25,000 hours of calls from customers that love us, customers that don't, prospects that ended up buying from us, prospects that ended up buying from competitors. I had customers tell us what products they wish we had, but we didn't, and prospects that we built that they don't use. And there's no better source of data than what your customers are telling you. And while Gong was a great method to collect it and even be able to go in and chat on a one-off basis, I wanted to build product from this data. Because ultimately, my use of AI and company B's use of AI, the only difference is the data that we have. We all have access to the same large language models. This data is unique and proprietary to us. And I basically made the determination that I'm going to be using these calls and the data from these calls to essentially build a panoply of different products on the back of it that essentially comes from the core consumer intelligence that we have. And I've used Zapier to build every single one of those.
Do you have it? Can you give an example of a specific one where you're like, this is the type of thing that our customers love?
I got plenty of examples. I never thought you'd ask. This is one called the Gong call stream. CS means customer success. The trigger here is a new task was successfully completed from the scrape that again was initiated from the call. So I had to basically, not every time you want to use an application will it be a trigger. And since this was basically event-based, like in other words, I couldn't run it every day. I had to run it every time there was a new call. When this task was successfully run, it started a new trigger.
Yeah. So that task there, that's the transcript coming in from Browse AI, right?
That's exactly right. So if I go into Edit Zap, you'll see here that this is an example, and you'll see this is the whole transcript. And now it's HTML formatted, but the great thing about Zapier is there's a formatting step that right here that removes the HTML tags. So all of a sudden, I'm taking something that was never meant to, and this is interesting because this is a product that Gong should have. And maybe they do have now, but it's not going to be as customized. So you can build products on top of other products. So if there's a product that you have that's really valuable, that has a missing feature set, that's basically what I did. I knew I needed more from these call transcripts, but I can tell you like this first step of figuring out how to hack the transcript, that was one of the most arduous things, because nothing exists for it. Right. And I had to keep trial and erroring until I figured it out. And I think when you look at a tool like Zapier, each one of these steps is basically like, a mile of a marathon that you're trying to run. And you just can't give up. And if you ever have issues, like now you have the ability to obviously within Zapier speak to the Copilot and help, which is an amazing tool for me. Or obviously you can go into ChatGPT if you want, and you can ask. And as long as you don't give up and you go step by step, you're going to be 60 steps down the line. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I created that. And then people start to look at you like you have a superpower, when your reality is you're just persistent and you understand the different tools that are available.
I think you're talking about an important thing here, which is, these AI systems, the data exists in one place, the LLM is in another place, and each of them has their like specialty, the thing that they're really good at. And the interoperability of these tools is still super nascent. Like it's just not particularly good. And so a skill that folks develop, the folks work on, that you clearly have done, is like how to break down these steps bit by bit and then figure out how do I orchestrate this in a journey that sort of eventually results in this outcome that I want to get at the end of the day. And so that's the skill that like the best people I see that are using AI the best are really good at that kind of thing.
Yep. 100%.
All right, so let's keep going. Tell us more about this.
So lots of steps here. So essentially, it removed the HTML tag from here. I had to parse out and split some text, to basically get the data in a certain way. I had a spreadsheet that essentially connected the call ID to other information I had to do a lookup on. So for example, I wanted my output for this particular thing I'm building to include the name of the rep who was on that customer call, but the scrape didn't have that. But I had a separate Google Sheet spreadsheet that basically correlated call ID numbers with the customer success rep. So I did a lookup, and now I'm pulling in more information. And often I find I have to do that where if like the initial data source doesn't have enough information to tell the whole story, I want to know if there's kind of like a correlating piece of data. And in this case, it was the call ID that existed in another data set, in this case, Google Sheets, and then I can pull that in. So here it's asking based upon that call information to look it up. And then based upon that, I have all the information, not only from the initial data I pulled in, but also what's in the spreadsheet. I had to also do a variety of other things. Like one thing I had to do, for example, is I had to get the person's email address. And what I found is one great way to get an email address if you use Slack is if you enter their name. Slack has a database of the email address for everyone's name when you set it up. So if I look up the user by name, it'll give me their email address. And I use Slack as kind of like a little hacky trick for building automations in my company if I want to correlate a name with an email address. And that's kind of how I did it. So this first part of the journey what I talked about is just gathering the information. And that's what I like.
The context, right? Mm-hmm.
All the context. And I'm pulling it in, and then everything I build on top of it, then, and I also like storing data, because when you run these things, you want to be able to go back to that data, in the future, and you don't want to spend the money to run the automation again. Right. Yeah. So one of the first things I built on top of this is a customer profile builder. So this is an OpenAI, and we have an API and we're an enterprise customer of OpenAI. And the only reason we did it, frankly, is because of Zapier. Like I pushed because I knew that I could use it in so many different ways. Your world leading business, and I actually told OpenAI that we were one of their earliest enterprise customers. And I said, I don't know how to get value from this, but I know how to from Zapier. And basically that's how we did it. Your world leading business intelligence analyst who analyzes call transcript and create a profile of the customer that participated during the call. So basically what this does is it creates segmentation. So this is where I asked the output, the customer name, the opportunity name, which of the 4 research pillars the customer is most interested in. So we have personas. These are different people Suzy sells to. And I basically asked, ChatGPT to tell me which persona this person was. So it basically segments it. And then what I am able to do is know somebody from this industry with this title wants this from Suzy. And I essentially dumped it all in a database called the Customer Profile Builder. So this basically, every call we have, it has the description of the role. It has the type of research. I'm not going to show it because I want to protect our clients' confidentiality, but description of the role, the product areas they're interested in, the consumer trends they're interested in. And this essentially creates a new aggregate database that then I can run into a model later and say, I'm pitching a brand manager from the automotive industry. What are they actually most likely to care about? So we have a separate custom GPT that we built with OpenAI, and that whole knowledge base is being created through these Zapier automations. And this allows our sales team to know if they're getting on a call with somebody in skincare at P&G, what are they most likely to care about from all the other calls we've had of similar people. So creating new data sources from this context that then you could deploy separate tools from is something else that we did. So the second thing, go on, please.
Yeah, question for you here on the prompt. Is this the first version of the prompt, or how many versions of the prompt have you worked on here?
Many versions of the prompt. And, sometimes to be honest with you, when you have stuff with 80 steps, it's like when I look at this, like I probably built this just says version 89, right? So like maybe this was version 3 when I built this, and it seemed to be working, but I would actually extract structured data. I would do this differently now knowing what I know about the tools. Mm-hmm. And that happens a lot where, like, for example, like Zapier now has ChatGPT 4.0 image generation, and through a different tool, I used to have to go outside of Zapier when I wanted dynamic prompts to create GPT 4.0 images, but now it's built in. So then I stopped the other one. I canceled that subscription, and now I just do it all, because obviously the less that you have to go to other apps, just the better it's going to work and more reliable it is and easier to deploy. So yes, always you want to refine the prompts. And this probably isn't a good example, one that needs refining, because it's more just like, it's pretty simple, but others you do. Another thing I wanted to do is from each call, I wanted to output SEO keywords. So we are constantly talking to clients, and there's constantly, and like even now, like I will probably, while we're on the phone, I'm going to change this to Turbo. I love when they add it, use latest stable version, so I don't have to update it. And now this is going to be better. Like the reason I'm doing it now for the first time is I frankly haven't been in this automation in so long. But what this does is it actually outputs a separate spreadsheet of every Google SEO keyword that we need to be running. And when those words get dropped into a Google sheet, they actually automatically get added to campaigns in Google. So now this essentially automates my SEO buying, and it creates into different groups. And there's a whole nother string of automations we built for our go-to-market that, again, is coming out of the call transcripts. Because if a customer is saying, I want to test vitamin labels with Suzy, well, I should be buying that keyword because there's probably 20 other ones that do too. And this is now not only extracting that information, but it's automating it.
Impressive. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to do is, so from this, obviously, so this is where it's actually adding the individual keywords. And then what I have is a section where now I want to give my team feedback on what's happened during the call. So you can almost think about the first thing that happened during the call was me extracting things for other uses. But the core use of this, and the reason why I built this to begin with, is that I want to know what's going on with our customers so we can respond to their needs. And I want to do it in a dynamic way. So what this does is your world-class customer leader giving feedback on customer success calls. Just give the below information. Don't address it like a letter. because it started to like write a letter to me. And so sometimes I just have to tell it things like that. And here's the call. Here's how you evaluate it. And basically what this does is it evaluates a customer call. And I tell it how to evaluate it. And I even ask it to give a score, which is a customer sentiment score. And basically I created a separate automation where if the score is below an 8, it actually creates another if-then automation where it actually tells the customer success person's boss that we have an unhappy customer. And then we have another flow. So it's a sentiment analyzer that has allowed us to really be quite proactive at any customer issues. And I'll actually show you. You can't see my screen anymore, can you?
I can't see.
I'm going to reshare. All right. So can you see the Slack on the screen or no?
Oh no, we see the Zap. Yeah. So
okay. So I'm going to go back right now, and I'm going to share with you an output of it. So let me say share screen. Let's see. Oh, okay. What's it? Entire screen. All right, perfect. I'm going to share my entire screen. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the output of it, which is, so this is an example from Slack, right? And I'm going to try to like really just not show you any specific information, but this is a customer. It has their opportunities, the feedback, the next steps, when the call started, when it ended, et cetera, and gives it a sentiment score. And it gets pushed into Slack, as well as tagging the people. So this is now a way where all of a sudden, I, as a CEO, can go into that feed at any time and see what happened during a customer call. What do they like? What didn't? Again, if the sentiment isn't good, it's going to tell their boss. We have built something else similar for a sales team, which is basically almost like a replica of this, except instead of it pulling in initially the gong calls with customers, it's gong calls with prospects. And it gives the salesperson a whole tutorial on what they did right and wrong, and then gives them a rating and then aggregates those ratings at the end of the week to their boss. So we're a remote company. And for me to find out what happened during a call, I'd have to ask the person. It's their own, myopic vision, where now I'm getting all the information. And so is their supervisor in real time, all on the backs of this one data feed.
Got it. So let's maybe continue on with the Zap. But the interesting thing here is you can see in this one Zap, you're stacking multiple tasks along. You've got it generating the transcript. You've got it searching for marketing keywords, helping you with collateral. And now you're doing a call coach all in the same thread.
100%. Because I think like it's all about understanding. And here's another one, follow-up email writer. What this does is after the call is done, it actually crafts a suggested follow-up email the salesperson should send, and then send it to them via Gmail, which they can copy and paste and edit and send out. Because as I was going through this and I was talking to my sales team, I was basically in problem-solving mode, right? And at first, obviously, the problem I wanted to solve is like, I want to know what's going on with customers. And then I want to intervene with customers who are unhappy. And then I wanted to figure out how to get more customers, which is where I got the Google keywords. But then I start to hear from the sales team, we're spending a little bit too much time writing follow-up emails after the call. And then I just added this. And now it just writes a follow-up email and it sends it to them via email right after the call. And I can customize it easily. And now they don't need to write that anymore. They can just review it and then send it out to the customer in their own right. And here's a churn early warning detector. So here, analyze the transcript and determine if the client discussed during the call indicated any sense of discomfort, unhappiness, concern, dissatisfaction, or other reason why his customer would be at potential risk of using Suzy's services. And what such risk detected? This is where AI is like magic. Yes or no? If so, please give it 2 to 3 why. And then just split it into pass. And basically the pass were, is it yes or no? Does the reply contain yes or no? And if it's yes, it sends on a whole new path that there's a churn detector. And these are trees that you can build across the data that you pull in, where you can pull it in based upon what people say, what industry they're in, and it kind of can keep building. We actually originally had this being much longer, but then since I wanted to give these different work streams to different owners, we kind of broke them apart. So we actually have multiple different Zaps that are kicked off by this call transcript. This used to be like 10 times bigger, but it just became unwieldy because multiple people were working on it at the same time. And then it just, so I think at a certain point, you want it's so easy to replicate Zapier and just assign them to somebody else that's what we started to do.
Yeah. That's a tactic we see from folks who are doing more sophisticated things as they start to modularize their Zaps and break them down into smaller pieces, helps them be more reliable, helps them manage them and collaborate with people better. So that is a pretty good tactic. All right. So we're here at the end of the Zap. Like, how would you categorize the impact of this use case at Suzy?
I mean, it's been massive. And you're only really seeing, frankly, the tip of the iceberg of this particular Zap, and I'm happy to show you others. But, a remote company is very hard to operate. We have 300 employees, and, I can't imagine running a company without this. Like, it's probably the most important tool we have, because I now know what customers are thinking. And from that, I will call on the product team and say, we need to build this, we need to build that, or I'll go build something just by what they're saying. So it's impacted our marketing, our go-to-market, our training, who we want to hire, our positioning. Before this, how would I do it? Sure, I can go in and search for keywords on Gong, but I'm only pulling in one call at a time. And obviously the best tools are the ones that are in your workflow. And with this tool, I was able to bring it into Slack where our team is. And now the learning, the great thing about this is there was no learning curve. Like, this didn't require them to change behavior. It just put better information in front of them where they already are. So it was the first step in us becoming an AI company. And it was easy for me to deploy because I didn't really have to ask my team to change their behavior.
Yeah. And I want to make sure I caught something. So, like, before, what were you doing before? It sounds like you just weren't doing this before.
One off. How did that call go with Microsoft? Oh, cool. Like, that's what it was. There was no, or I would go into Gong from time to time, but like, who has time to go into a tool and search for all these things? I don't even know what I'm searching for. Yeah. Right. And I think one way the world's going to change is like this notion of going into these complex dashboards to find information you're looking for, which is why I love the work that you guys are doing on agents is so smart, because I think the way that people get information is going to be far more humanized. Meaning, like, if I asked you for information on how your business is doing, you're not going to send me graphs and charts. If we're friends, you're going to be like, oh, this is going well, this isn't it. And I can ask you, it's conversational. So you can take data and make it conversational and humanize it. And I think the problem with existing SaaS tools today is they often require a learning curve to understand how to pull reports, how to go into a dashboard, even having to log in somewhere else. Where with this, you can take that same data and you can present it in a way that works with your company's workflow. And again, continue to build more and more stuff over time. Right now, I'm building something coming out of this, which is basically like I'm using HeyGen to build like dynamic videos that come out of it for sales training. So, hey, salesperson, you did this. This is what we learned, and actually have a dynamic video. So as the tools get better, as the LLMs get better, the automations just get more and more powerful over time. And that's another thing that's so exciting about this.
100%. And I think, like, you said an important thing there where, I think the mainstream media would want you to believe that, like, like AI is just like wiping out people's jobs, which sure, there may be some on the margin places where that does happen, but more what I see is what you're doing, where it's like, we just simply weren't doing this before. There was no way we could have done it. And now we're able to add this whole new capability to our company that just allows us to be a better company, to function better, to have better operations, to provide value better for our customers, so on and so forth. And that's, I think, what often folks are not paying enough attention to, is like, oh, man.
I mean, you're so, I was actually on Today's Show this morning doing a segment about the future of AI in the workforce. And this notion of the future belongs to those who can identify problems versus knowing how to solve the problem is really, I think, what it's about. Because I didn't have any technical skill set. I just had determination, perseverance, initiative, but I knew the most important problems. And I was able to use a tool like yours and build something that if McKinsey came in, they probably would have charged me $4 million to build, right? And I can tell you, if you want to future-proof yourself, if you can learn how to do stuff like this, you are future-proofed. You're going to 10x your importance and value to any organization, because you're essentially able to do things on your own that in the past entire teams would have had to do. But it all starts with understanding what is the problem you need to solve. And I think when you start there and you go step by step, like ChatGPT has been great for me in Zapier, because I basically, output the PNG file of whatever automation and I ask, what am I missing? How do I make this better? And I know you guys have a co-pilot now as well. And, it really just takes perseverance and focus, and you can really build anything on your platform. And it really allows you to 10X, again, everything you're doing.
I love it. All right, we've got time. Let's do one more demo. If you got another demo pulled up, we can do that, and then maybe we'll have time for Q&A after this next one. So I think you have 2 other examples pulled up. Do you want to do?
I have one good one I really want to
Okay, one. Let's do that one.
Publishing engine.
Let's do the publishing engine.
Yeah, and for some reason the table, I think, like I have 2 logins, was Zapier, and the other the table that I wanted to show with the raw data actually is a different login. So you'll have to use your imagination for what a table looks like. That's fine. But I'll show you what it is. This is super cool.
Good.
So we at Suzy, we try to keep our clients in the loop on trends, and we are constantly collecting industry trends about different industries, food and bev, beauty, etc. And we have a database that we've created through a partner that shows increases in search volume on Google of certain keywords. So it could be like, I don't know, matcha, or like a certain type of beauty routine. And that's information that our clients want to know about. And obviously we could send them a report with a list of these things, but we all know that our clients engage in social media. So I want to basically be able to leverage Zapier to create a publishing engine. So here it all starts with a new record in Zapier. And basically we have a separate automation that is dropping in data. But here's an example: the name of the trend, watermelon soap, the description of what watermelon soap is, what is its year-over-year Google search volume increase, and what are the key categories of interest that are correlated to this. So this is being fed from a different automation into Zapier tables. And I really have started to use tables more and more because it's just so much more reliable. Like nothing ever breaks when I use tables. Like when I use Sheets sometimes, or Airtable, sometimes I have formatting issues and things like that, mapping issues, etc. So I really have moved more and more of my automations to Zapier tables. So this basically extracts the information and asks it to write, using social media best practices, write a LinkedIn post of no more than 1,000 characters summarizing an emerging trends detailed below. This is who you are. This is the audience. So I actually ask it to write a post. Then I ask it to use ChatGPT 4.0 image generator, generated image. Now, this is really cool that most people don't know about, is you actually can use JSON formatting in GPT 4.0. I think it's one of the best use cases of Zapier is you can pull in variables from previous steps to have a consistent output of dynamic photos that essentially pull in data from what you're pulling into. So this essentially creates an image, and as you'll see in a second, it's consistent. And then I use a tool called Buffer, which drops the social media post and image into a queue that publishes. And so it doesn't publish all at once because Buffer has a tool where it puts it in a queue and it publishes it for you. And the output is something like this, where I'm continuing to output. These are all.
Oh, are you showing the output, Matt? Just real quick. Did you?
Yeah, this is an output.
Yeah, we
now
see the
spice up your menu. So this had 0 human interaction. And
we see your Zap on the screen. Do you have the actual output?
Oh, you don't see it. Oh, sorry. I was showing
you might have to pause sharing.
Yeah, I got it. Let me show
you. You want to see the magic trick.
Obviously, I'm going to pay that off for you. So here you go. This is the output, and you could see trend alert, and then you can see the images, and every image is completely consistent.
Now it's the same style everywhere.
Yeah, I know this could be better. I'm obviously busy, like I'm building a lot of shit. So but I mean, this is going to be like the future of publishing. We're going to create this for every category. And over time, like you can use the same approach to send out hyper-personalized email. Like we're all talking about the age of hyper-personalization. If you have a database where you have information on the customer and you have their email address, you can essentially use a tool like SendGrid, which is also integrated with Zapier. And you can actually send people emails with custom imagery based upon who they are, with custom trends or things that they care about, through an engine like this as well. This is a one-to-many approach. So obviously we're using this. This just launched, and like clients, we haven't even marketed yet. And clients like, how are you creating this? And there's 0 cost for this, right? Besides whatever we're paying the LLM for it, and you guys, but basically it just publishes automatically for us. And this is pretty cool, right? And it doesn't have to just be on social media. You can integrate with WordPress and publish a blog. You can integrate with Gemini and publish a podcast. Like, publishing is going to become hyper personalized. You should be able to do it without marginal human costs. And if you get the automations right, you could really do some amazing things.
I love it. The thing I love too that you're doing that's smart there is the consistency. It's like you have a prompt format that you continue to use every single time, so it stays on brand. And to your point, you can do that across image, across text, across podcast. As long as you know what that, if you take the time to write down what it is, you get the.
And you know how I got that? I took a different asset. I screenshotted it. I put it in the ChatGPT and I said, leave room for the variable, whatever the variable of the topic is. Write this JSON prompt, and knowing. And ChatGPT knows like Zapier front and back. It even outputs in a way where I can just copy and paste it, and it keeps the variable in it, which is awesome. So it can actually, it has helped me with a lot of prompts within ChatGPT where I'll copy and paste the whole prompt with the variable, and it'll fix it. And when I copy it from ChatGPT and I post it back in Zapier, the variable stays, which is awesome because then you can just keep optimizing over time.
Totally. So if you're thinking like, hey, I'm not so technical or whatnot, like you don't actually have to know this stuff. You just have to know how to talk to ChatGPT and be like, hey, give it back to me this way.
You gotta know what you want to do. Like, it's just, what do you want to do? And it's really like, the world is your oyster, and you are limited only to your potential of thinking about big ideas. And again, it might take you 112 steps, but if you don't give up, you'll get there eventually. And that I think, again, is the skill set that's going to be needed in the modern world. And what, again, your platform, and you're not paying me to do this. Like, I'm paying you. You're like, I'm your customer, but I'm being honest. And that it's such an intuitive tool that allows you to do such incredible things. I think kids should be taught tools like this in school, because I think no matter what industry you're in, this is what you're going to need to think to be able to be really effective in the new world.
I love it. Alrighty, we've got about 15 minutes left. We're going to invite Ryan up to help us moderate some questions from the audience. So Ryan, you want to join us on stage and you can help dole out questions to Matt and I?
Yes, of course. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome. Great. I'll go through here, but I got maybe an easy one here from Wendy for you, Matt. What are the top 10 tools that you are using most commonly with Zapier?
Obviously, ChatGPT. I use Tables, which is a Zapier tool. I still use a lot of the Google Suite tools because my company's on that. I use a great tool called Banner Bear. And Banner Bear basically allows you to take a raw image like the one I just showed you and actually put it into a frame or template that's consistent. Or if you need things in a certain spot, so there's really cool things you can do with Banner Bear. And I use that a lot. I love all the formatting tools that are in Zapier, so I use that a lot. Salesforce, all the parts of our stack that matter. I think GPT-4o image is incredible, and I think HeyGen is incredible in terms of just media content. So I'm using a lot of that. Those are the ones that come to mind. There's probably obviously lots. I also love Buffer for publishing, because your ability to publish is so important. But you just think about the pillars of a company: marketing, sales, R&D, HR. Whatever the core tools are there that you're using in your stack, Slack is another one, you can integrate and tie it all together.
I really loved what you showed there, because it's so bespoke, right? That publishing engine is so perfect for y'all's business, which is,
and frankly, it is a business. I think that could be a company, right? And it's just, and so many things I've created would have been a product that would have raised $100 million in 2021. And you could just literally create it now by stitching. It's crazy.
You have a very similar mindset to a customer of ours. His name's Marcus at Remote, and he similarly is a lot of the things I'm building are just these SaaS apps that any business could be using. It's just perfect for us. Cool. How about a higher level question? And I'll turn it to both of you. This is from Kevin. I think the answer is, in terms of preferred, depends on the business. But when it comes to an AI rollout model, what are y'all seeing different companies do successfully, whether it be hub and spoke, fully democratized, top down, something else? What are y'all seeing most commonly that other companies are doing when they're rolling out AI?
Wait, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So I think the tactics that I see that are most common with customers that are having a lot of success tend to follow a similar pattern. First, they're getting access to the tools. It's hard to do much if you don't have like a place to experiment. And so they're, picking an LLM provider. Maybe it's ChatGPT, or maybe it's Claude, or maybe it's Gemini. They're buying a tool like Zapier. They're buying some of these things that give their employees a playground. So I think that's thing one. Thing two is when they do that, they're making sure that it is not accidentally breaking any agreements they have. So that they have a terms of service, if they have data privacy agreements, if they have things like that, they're making sure that all those boxes are checked. But then within those guardrails, that's when they start to provide widespread access to allow a lot of bottoms up adoption to happen. And they'll often do, hackathons. This was really popular for us at Zapier, how we got a lot of adoption going on. Doesn't necessarily have to be a hackathon, but they're finding ways to get people to plant a lot of flowers and see what could go. Then based on that experimentation, it is often shining a light on where there is much larger opportunity. And then in those areas, they'll often stand up a specific effort and say, okay, here's a thing that is going to be really impactful. We want to have a dedicated person or a dedicated team to actually scaling this out and doing this properly versus like the hackathon version way. And so in doing so, you kind of see this like bottoms up meets like tops down point of view kind of smashing together to create sort of the best of both worlds. And I think that's counter to the companies that I see maybe having the toughest time. The ones that tend to have the toughest time tend to be, one, scared. They're just not sure what this stuff is going to happen here. Two, they're probably overly fixated ROI on day one. ROI is important, but it's hard to measure an ROI without any investment. You have to actually invest to get activity to see and to learn and build those use cases up. And three, they're probably not giving enough access to the tooling. And they're way too concerned with cost up front. And look, cost is an important factor. Like these tools cost money. But the reality is if you do it well, as you can see from Matt here, you're often able to invest far less and get much higher results once you figure out those use cases. But it does require to spend a little bit of money up front just to get going.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. I think in addition, for me, I think the challenge and the opportunity is just finding the people who have this mindset. Like there are people like me that can jump on a tool like this and just, it's like kind of like a kid in the candy store, right? And it's like, oh, I can do this, this, and that. There's other people who just don't even know where to start. They get overwhelmed. It's a paradox of choice. And I think that's a real issue. The other thing is like what I'm finding at Suzy is we have to look at our entire organizational design because some of the skill sets I went through today, like are much more marketing and, I guess creative technologist oriented than it is traditional R&D. But you don't want to disconnect it or divorce from R&D at the same time. So how do you reorganize? So like we're doing things like thinking about like, do we actually collapse marketing and product, for example? Because marketing is kind of where our creativity and problem solvers are. And then product is obviously you need access to the data, you need security, all these things. Like tools like this kind of allow a marketing person and an engineer to sit in a room. And my new mandate at Suzy is you can have meetings, but after your meeting, the product better be better. You shouldn't have an agreement to have 3 more meetings, right? And with a tool like this, you can meet and during the meeting, you're updating the product. And at the end, you have a better product and that's how companies are moving so fast right now.
Yeah, I love that. I think we see that too. There's this like very natural flattening that's happening, or like teams are coming together more cross-functionally because you're starting to see folks with different skill sets be able to leverage these tools and build if they were never building before, or market if they were never marketing before. So it's a really, really cool thing that's just happening naturally. I love that. Here's one. I might change this question just slightly from Jerry's, asking kind of about the cost of the things that you're building, but also the KPIs. I think the thing that's interesting, Matt, you just mentioned this a little bit. When you go in to build something new, are you thinking about them from a KPI perspective of like,
no,
here's the goal I'm trying to accomplish?
Instead of me watching Netflix for 2 hours, I'm building this. So that's like especially when you're talking about call logs, like it's just there's OpenAI credits you're using, but it's an internal tool. Like it's kind of minimal, to be honest with you. It's in like the hundreds of dollars. And what's expensive to different companies is different based upon their size. But for us, the marginal cost is nothing, and the investment is just me spending 3 hours building it. to me, there's no downside. And I think same with the publishing engine. We're like, if I wanted a group to find posts, write them, and publish every day, I probably would have to hire 2 full-time employees working on that. I built that in 3 hours, and now we're publishing every single day with zero marginal cost. So to me, like, cost is the last thing I worry about and stuff like this. To me, it's like, it's more about time.
Yeah.
Like, to be honest with you, these days, like, I will rethink a lunch that I'll have with somebody because I know how much now I can accomplish on this tool in 3 hours. So it's like, would I rather 3 hours from now have a new product, or would I rather have lunch with somebody, right? So I'll order in lunch. But that's sort of how, once you start to see what it can unlock, you can move really quickly.
I love that. I don't know, any additional commentary, Wade, or I'll move on from there. How you?
I thought that comment's great. Would you rather change your life, or would you rather have lunch?
You can still have lunch. Just order it in. Just order it in.
Both. Well, we do that inside of Zapier all the time, which is, it is fun building together. So yeah, like, let's get lunch together and let's build for an hour. And that is one way to break through, I think, some of the friction and resistance that can happen when it's just you on your own building. It's like, yeah, pull up a chair with someone or just spend an hour together. It goes a long way.
Yep.
Nice. Well, maybe on that note, here's another question from Justin.
Another thing I want to tell you guys is what I figured out also is the prompts. So I have a bunch of different Zaps that use similar prompts, like, for example, writing social media posts. And what I used to have to do is go in all the Zaps if I wanted to update the prompt. Now I actually have a separate table that has the prompts, and I pull them up dynamically. So I only have to update the table, and then it gets updated on all of them. So it's a level of systems thinking where you don't have to actually update all of them, and that allows you to really build. And I think in a world of agents, that level of thinking is incredibly powerful.
Totally. I think systems thinkers have, like, this is a really cool era for folks that think that way. Well, maybe here's another system question for you, because it was also cool to see you live edit your Zap as you go, which is a kind of vibe building you brought to the, you brought a little vibe building to the webinar, which is awesome. But
I may even be building right now while we're on this webinar when I'm not showing my screen. I won't tell you, but I may be.
Perfect. Well, obviously, like, feedback loops are here. You're building stuff for, the business, the teams.
Yep.
Like, how are you getting feedback from folks that are either benefiting or, I don't know, maybe, a Zap needs to be fixed? How do you get that feedback from the team?
I use a Zap form, and people fill it out. Every single one, there's a link with it, like in Slack where I'm publishing the CS Gong stream, the call stream. I have a link within the Slack at the top on the channel with a Gong form. A Zapier form that people fill out and give me feedback. And then I build an automation which aggregates the feedback on a weekly basis and emails it to me at the same time every Friday. And that's how I get feedback. It's built into the current platform.
That's great. Okay. Very cool. That's awesome. Nice. Wade, any other questions you're seeing here? We've got a few more, but any ones that are top of mind that you really want to answer?
There's a couple that are in the same theme of, like, where should I get started? Like, what, if I don't have any ideas, how do I find ideas?
It's all about finding the problem you want to solve. Like, zoom out in your life or your business. What is holding you back? What are your goals, right? Like, what a year from now, if you were sitting here on the same date and your business was in a much better place, what would have to be true, right? Then what is holding you back from that being true? And then you could even have that conversation with the ChatGPT, and it'll say, this is your real problem. It's generating pipeline. It's brand awareness, and you need to create more content. You don't understand the customer well enough. You don't have product market fit, whatever that thing is. And then from that, okay, what type of tool or product do I need to build to help me do it? And once you've identified it, what steps do I need to make to build the tool? So I think people get very overwhelmed. It's like being in a Vegas buffet and there's a million types of food and you're starving, but you don't know what to eat, right? It's much better if you know what you're in a mood for when you show up. Don't even start until you know what you want to build. And the way you know what you want to build is all starts with the problem.
Yeah. What I would add to that, what I see the best folks do that, have maybe gone through this struggle is, one, I do think it takes a minute to, like, build your, like, self-awareness up. So there's just a certain element of just, like, watching what you're doing throughout the day, thinking about the things and just, like, write it down. It might feel tedious at first, but it builds that muscle of just, like, watching where you're at. So that's one tactic. But the other tactic that Matt said that I would echo is talk to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is a good coach. So you can say, hey, this is my job at work. These are the things that I'm trying to do at work. These are the problems I have. I'm struggling to come up with these things. One of my like favorite tools to just like test out our own recommendation systems is to literally say, hey, I'm the CEO of an automation company, but I'm really bad at automation and I don't know where to start. Here are some things that I do every single day. Like, what ideas do you have for me? And then just see what it says, and then go back and forth on it. Give it more information. Give it suggestion here or there, and you'll start to just it may not always give you the exact answer that you're looking for, but the back and forth, it's like talking to that rubber duck, and you start to go, oh, not quite that, but actually this thing could really work. And so you just get that feedback loop that helps you come up with ideas for yourself.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe I'll add on 2 more pieces of advice, which is a common one is if you do anything twice, it can probably be automated. So as soon as you hit that second, third time, that's probably some process that you can automate. And then the other one is maybe don't start with the hardest problem to solve for. Start with a simple one and start building your skills and just figuring out how to put it into practice.
I think, yeah, that's a great suggestion, Ryan. Like, find a basic thing. Like a great basic one is if you have a lead form on your site and you save it to a CRM, put a step in the middle that says, hey, I want to get extra information, like enrich this lead. And you can just try a really basic prompt. It doesn't have to be as sophisticated as the one that Matt is, but just see what it does. And then over time, you can go like, well, what if I prompted it with more guidance and see what happens? And that's just like a really easy way to get going. And then over time, you'll start to realize like, well, I could also do this, and I could also do this. And before you know it, you've got version 89, like Matt.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're out of time here. I want to thank the audience for all the questions today, and especially want to thank you, Matt, and you, Wade, for leading here. I'll let y'all sign off.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for everything your team does, and looking forward to seeing how you continue to build everything in the future.